The massive viewing screen in Harmony Hub's main assembly hall flickered to life, displaying the familiar blue-green marble that had caused so much debate among the galactic powers. Earth hung suspended in the void, seemingly peaceful and innocent. Yet this small planet had somehow managed to develop faster than light travel in record time, forcing the established civilizations to acknowledge their existence. Ambassador David Reed adjusted his simple black suit as he walked through the corridors of the neutral station. Around him, beings of incredible diversity moved with purpose. The tall, scaled Draconis delegates swept past in their ornate robes, their golden eyes gleaming with barely concealed disdain. The ethereal Lumina Collective floated by in their energy forms, communicating through patterns of light that humans could barely perceive. Each species had ruled the stars for thousands of years, and none were pleased about welcoming newcomers to their exclusive club. The assembly hall fell silent as Reed entered and took his designated seat. The chair seemed deliberately smaller than the others, positioned at the far end of the curved table. It was a subtle reminder of humanity's place in the galactic hierarchy. The Galactic Council had been meeting for over 3,000 years, and tradition mattered more than courtesy. High Counselor Thane of the Draconis Empire stood first, his massive frame casting shadows across the polished floor. His voice carried the weight of centuries as he addressed the assembly. We gathered today to discuss the increasing concerns regarding the human expansion. In the past 50 years since their admission to our society, they have established colonies in 17 systems. Their growth rate is unprecedented and troubling. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The insectoid hive queen clicked her approval, while the crystalline beings of the Stellar Union chimed in harmonious discord. Reed remained silent, his face showing no emotion, as species after species voiced their concerns about humanity's rapid spread across the galaxy. They reproduce like vermin, hissed Counselor Vrath, his serpentine form coiled around his speaking podium. Their lifespan is pathetically short, yet they breed constantly. In another century, they will outnumber several of our established civilizations. The Lumina representative pulsed with pale yellow light, their translated thoughts filling the chamber. Their technology advances at an alarming rate. They achieved interstellar flight in mere decades after discovering atomic energy. Most species require millennia for such development. Reed finally stood when granted permission to speak. The chamber's attention focused on him, and he felt the weight of their collective judgment. Honored members of the Council, humanity appreciates the opportunity to address these concerns. We seek only to find suitable worlds for our growing population and to contribute to galactic peace and prosperity. A sound that might have been laughter emanated from the Gorian delegation. War Chief Brutus, leader of the military caste, spoke with barely contained mockery. Peace? Your species has been at war with itself since you developed metal tools. Your entire history is written in blood and conflict. You expect us to believe you seek peace among the stars? We have learned from our past, Reed replied calmly. Our experiences have taught us the value of cooperation and diplomacy. Your experiences, Thane interjected, his golden eyes narrowing, have taught you only violence and destruction. We have observed your world for decades. You poison your own atmosphere, devastate your ecosystems, and slaughter each other over resources and ideologies. What possible contribution could such a species make to our civilized society? The debate continued for hours, with species after species questioning humanity's right to expand, their worthiness for galactic citizenship, and their potential threat to established order. Reed answered each challenge with measured responses, never raising his voice or showing anger. He played the role of the humble supplicant perfectly, just as his government had instructed. What the council members didn't know was that every human ship exploring the galaxy carried advanced sensor, arrays, and recording equipment. While they debated humanity's fitness for galactic society, human reconnaissance vessels were mapping every military installation, every defensive network, and every fleet position within 100 light-years of Earth. The data flowed back to Luna Station, where Admiral Roberts and his staff compiled detailed intelligence reports on every major power. The Draconis Empire maintained over 300 battle stations throughout their territory, each one now catalogued and analyzed. The hegemony's fleet movements followed predictable patrol patterns that human strategists had already identified weaknesses in. Even the secretive Lumina Collective's energy-based defenses had been studied and countermeasures developed. As the session drew to a close, the Council voted on new restrictions for human expansion. Several sectors were declared off-limits to human colonization, ostensibly to protect fragile ecosystems and archaeological sites of galactic importance. In reality, these were buffer zones designed to contain humanity's growth and limit their access to valuable resources. Reed accepted the restrictions with gracious humility, thanking the Council for their wisdom and guidance. He spoke of humanity's eagerness to prove themselves worthy of galactic citizenship and their commitment to following all established laws and customs. The other delegates seemed satisfied with this display of submission. They had put the upstart humans in their place, reminded them of their position as the newest and least significant members of galactic society. As the session ended, conversations resumed about more important matters, dismissing the human problem as handled. But Reed's calm exterior masked a different reality. Before leaving Harmony Hub, he transmitted a coded message to Earth using humanity's quantum communication network. The message was brief, but significant. Council proceedings concluded as expected. Recommend proceeding to Phase 2 of Titan. Protocol. All intelligence gathering objectives achieved. On Luna Station, Admiral Roberts read the message and nodded grimly. Phase 1 had been about learning the galaxy's true nature, understanding that humanity would never be accepted as equals through diplomacy alone. The major powers saw humans as primitive barbarians to be contained and controlled, not partners to be respected. Deep beneath Earth's surface, in facilities hidden from orbital observation, the next phase was already underway. Humanity had learned long ago that respect couldn't be asked for or negotiated. It had to be earned through strength, and sometimes that strength needed to be demonstrated in ways that left no room for doubt or misunderstanding. The galaxy thought it knew humanity's capabilities based on their current technology and military displays. They were about to learn how wrong they had been, and how dangerous it was to underestimate a species that had survived by fighting itself for millennia. The emergency alert pierced through the early morning calm of Earth's Global Defense Command. President Morgan was pulled from sleep by the urgent chiming of her secure communication device, the sound that every world leader dreaded hearing. The timestamp showed 0347 GMT, and the priority level was marked as Alpha 1, reserved only for existential threats to human civilization. Within minutes, she stood in the underground war room beneath Geneva, surrounded by holographic displays showing the destruction of New Haven Colony. The images were stark and terrible. What had been a thriving settlement of 2 million humans was now nothing but radioactive glass and twisted metal. The hegemony fleet responsible for the attack was already retreating beyond the colony's sensor range, leaving behind only death and a clear message. General Hayes, head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, briefed the assembled leadership with clinical precision. The attack began at 1930 local time on New Haven. No warning was given. The hegemony forces consisted of 47 warships led by their Conquest-class dreadnought Dominator. Our defense platforms were destroyed in the opening salvo. Colonial, militia forces engaged but were overwhelmed within hours. Admiral Roberts joined the briefing via quantum link from Luna Station, his weathered face grim with suppressed anger. This wasn't random violence. Intelligence indicates the hegemony has been planning this for months. They've also hit Frontier Station and the mining facility at Beta Centauri 7. They're testing our responses and probing our defenses. President Morgan studied the tactical displays, her mind racing through the implications. The hegemony was a militaristic alliance of 4 warrior species, led by the brutal Gorians who viewed conflict as both entertainment and religious practice. They had been expanding aggressively for the past century, absorbing smaller civilizations and enslaving populations that couldn't defend themselves. What was the Galactic Council's response to our request for intervention? Morgan asked, though she already suspected the answer. Ambassador Reed's image appeared on another screen, transmitted from Harmony Hub where he was demanding an emergency session. They're calling it an internal dispute and refusing to take sides. Several council members have privately expressed that humanity brought this on ourselves by expanding too quickly. The Draconis Empire actually commended the hegemony for maintaining territorial integrity. The room fell silent as the full scope of their isolation became clear. Humanity was alone in the galaxy, facing an enemy that possessed superior numbers and technology, with no allies willing to provide assistance. It was a familiar situation for the human species, but this time the stakes were measured in worlds rather than nations. Dr. Williams entered the war room carrying a sealed briefcase, her security clearance allowing access to the most classified areas of human government. She was the lead scientist on Project Titan, a program so secret that fewer than 100 people knew of its existence. Her presence meant that desperate measures were about to become necessary measures. "Madam President," she began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to reveal. "The Titan facility is ready for operational deployment. All testing phases have been completed successfully, and the Sovereign is prepared for immediate launch." President Morgan had been briefed on Titan only once before, during her first week in office. The project represented humanity's ultimate contingency plan, developed in secret over the past 30 years by the brightest minds from every nation on Earth. It was their insurance policy against the day when diplomacy failed and humanity faced extinction. The briefing room's main display shifted to show classified technical specifications that made even experienced military officers gasp in surprise. The Sovereign was unlike any vessel in human service or galactic knowledge. 20 kilometers of advanced engineering, powered by fusion reactors that could energize a small city, and armed with weapons that existed nowhere else in the known universe. "The gravitational manipulation systems are fully operational," Dr. Williams continued, her scientific enthusiasm barely contained despite the grim circumstances. "We can create localized space-time distortions capable of tearing apart molecular bonds at the quantum level. The primary cannon can generate artificial black holes with precise duration and intensity controls." General Hayes leaned forward, studying the technical readouts with professional interest. "What about crew requirements and operational parameters?" "Full automation with a minimal crew of 50 specialists. The ship's AI systems can handle all combat operations independently, though human oversight is recommended for strategic decisions. Captain Reynolds has been training with the systems for 2 years and is ready to assume command." Admiral Roberts nodded approvingly. Reynolds was one of their best, a veteran of Earth's last World War, who understood both the necessity of overwhelming force and the restraint required to use it effectively. If humanity was going to reveal its true capabilities to the galaxy, they needed someone who could demonstrate power without appearing unstable or unpredictable. The debate that followed lasted 6 hours, covering every aspect of revealing the Sovereign's existence. Some argued for diplomatic solutions, others for gradual escalation. But the reality was undeniable. The hegemony had declared war on humanity, and the Galactic Council had chosen to remain neutral. Traditional military responses would result in human defeat and possible extinction. President Morgan made the decision that would change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. Project Titan is now operational. The Sovereign will deploy immediately to intercept any further hegemony aggression against human colonies. Dr. Williams, how long before the ship can be ready for combat operations? 18 hours for final systems checks and crew boarding. The launch window from the Sahara facility opens at 14 tomorrow. As the meeting concluded, secure communications went out to human colonies throughout the galaxy. The message was simple: maintain defensive positions and prepare for significant changes in the strategic situation. What they didn't say was that humanity was about to demonstrate why their species had survived and thrived despite being surrounded by predators for millions of years. Deep beneath the Sahara Desert, in a facility that existed on no official records, the Sovereign prepared for its first and most important mission. The ship's massive form rested in a launch chamber carved from solid rock, surrounded by the most advanced technology humanity had ever created. Soon, It would emerge into space and show the galaxy what happened when a species born from conflict decided to stop hiding its true nature. The hegemony had made a fatal error in judgment. They had attacked humanity expecting to face a primitive species with crude weapons and simple tactics. Instead, they would face the culmination of human engineering and the focused fury of a civilization that had learned to turn war into both art and science. The morning sky above New Geneva burned with the light of enemy weapons as the hegemony fleet descended from orbit like metallic vultures. 200 warships blotted out the stars, their hulls scarred from countless previous conquests. This human colony had prospered for 30 years, becoming a beacon of human achievement with its sprawling cities and advanced terraforming projects. Now it would serve as an example to any species that dared resist hegemony expansion. War Chief Brutus stood on the command deck of his flagship Annihilator, watching the preliminary bombardment reduce human defensive satellites to expanding clouds of debris. The planet's surface installations were putting up token resistance, but their weapons barely scratched the shields of his fleet. This would be over quickly, just like the other human colonies they had cleansed. Surface defenses neutralized, reported his tactical officer, a scarred veteran of dozens of planetary invasions. Human ground forces are retreating to their urban centers. Shall we begin the glassing procedure? Brutus nodded with satisfaction. The glassing of a world was both practical and symbolic, turning the entire planetary surface into smooth, radioactive crystal while demonstrating the futility of resistance to hegemony rule. Begin bombardment pattern 7. I want this world to serve as a monument to human foolishness. The massive energy cannons of the fleet began their systematic destruction of New Geneva's surface. Cities that had taken decades to build vanished in seconds under the concentrated firepower. Mountains were leveled, oceans boiled away, and the atmosphere itself began to burn under the intensity of the attack. Governor Mitchell huddled in the colony's emergency bunker, watching helplessly as his world died around him. The communication system still functioned, carrying desperate pleas for help to every human outpost within range, but the nearest military vessels were days away, and no force in human service could challenge a fleet this size. Then something impossible appeared on the long-range sensors. A single contact emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the system, its energy signature unlike anything in the colonial databases. The contact was massive, dwarfing even the largest human dreadnoughts, but it moved with the grace and speed of a much smaller vessel. As it approached at incredible velocity, the sensors began revealing details that defied understanding. The ship was 20 kilometers long, its hull a seamless blend of curves and angles that seemed to bend light around its edges. Weapon ports dotted its surface like the eyes of some ancient predator, and energy readings showed power levels that exceeded anything previously recorded. Most disturbing of all, the ship's configuration matched no known design in galactic databases. Brutus received the sensor reports with growing confusion and anger. What is that thing? Where did it come from? His intelligence officer worked frantically at his console, cross-referencing the readings with every known ship class in their extensive military database. Unknown configuration, War Chief. The power signature suggests it's a capital ship, but the design is completely foreign to our records. Is it human? Impossible to determine. The technology appears far beyond their current capabilities. The mysterious vessel continued its approach, ignoring communication attempts from both the hegemony fleet and the desperate colonists below. It took a position directly between the attacking fleet and the burning planet, its weapons systems powering up with energy cascades that painted space in brilliant colors. Then it transmitted on all frequencies, its message reaching every ship in the system and beyond. This is Captain Reynolds of the Earth vessel Sovereign. You have attacked human civilians without provocation. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Brutus laughed at the audacity. A single ship, regardless of its size, challenging his entire fleet, was either madness or suicide. Perhaps both. Respond to the Earth vessel. Tell them they have 1 minute to withdraw before we add their wreckage to the debris field. The reply came back immediately, spoken in the calm tone of someone who held all the advantages. War Chief, Brutus, you are responsible for the deaths of millions of innocent people across 3 human colonies. This aggression ends now. You have 30 seconds to begin your withdrawal. The hegemony fleet moved into attack formation, their combined firepower capable of reducing entire moons to asteroid fields. 200 ships against 1 seemed like overwhelming odds, even considering the mysterious vessel's impressive size. Brutus had conquered civilizations with smaller fleets. All ships target the human vessel. Fire on my command. The Sovereign's response was swift and devastating. Instead of the energy beams or missile salvos that characterized conventional space combat, the human ship unleashed something entirely different. Reality itself seemed to twist around its primary weapons, creating distortions in space-time that bent light and warped matter. The first wave of hegemony ships simply ceased to exist, not destroyed in the traditional sense, but unmade at the fundamental level as gravitational forces tore their molecular structure apart. Entire dreadnoughts collapsed into points of infinite density before exploding outward in cascades of exotic particles. Brutus watched in horror as half his fleet vanished in seconds, their destruction so complete that even their debris was reduced to component atoms. The remaining ships fired desperately at the Sovereign, but their weapons seemed ineffective against whatever technology protected the human vessel. Impossible, he whispered, watching his most powerful warships crumble like paper in a hurricane. No species possesses such weapons. The Sovereign continued its methodical dismantling of the hegemony fleet, each shot precisely calculated to eliminate threats while minimizing collateral damage to the planet below. Secondary weapon systems engaged multiple targets simultaneously, creating localized gravitational anomalies that pulled enemy ships apart from the inside out. Governor Mitchell and his surviving colonists watched from their bunkers as their mysterious savior completed the destruction of the attacking fleet. In less than 10 minutes, 200 of the galaxy's most advanced warships had been reduced to expanding clouds of superheated plasma and exotic particles. Only War Chief Brutus and a handful of his fastest ships escaped, fleeing into hyperspace, with sensor records that would change the balance of power throughout the galaxy. Behind them, the Sovereign maintained its position above New Geneva, its weapon system still active and ready. The transmission that followed reached every receiver, within 50 light-years, ensuring that news of humanity's true capabilities would spread throughout galactic civilization within days. This is the Earth vessel Sovereign to all recipients. For 50 years, humanity has sought peace through diplomacy and cooperation. We have endured insults, restrictions, and condescension from civilizations that considered us primitive and weak. Today, that changes. Captain Reynolds paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle across the galaxy. We are not the helpless barbarians you believed us to be. We are the children of Earth, forged by millions of years of conflict and shaped by the necessity of survival. We have weapons that can unmake worlds and technology that defies your understanding. But we use these gifts only to protect the innocent and preserve the peace. The message concluded with a simple warning that would echo through diplomatic channels for generations. Leave humanity in peace, and we will leave you in peace. Threaten our people, attack our worlds, or attempt to enslave our species, and you will face the full might of Earth's response. This is not a negotiation. This is a promise. The emergency broadcast reached every corner of civilized space within hours, carried by the fastest communication networks the galaxy possessed. War Chief Brutus transmitted his sensor logs and tactical analysis from the safety of a hegemony fortress world, his voice shaking with barely controlled rage and something that might have been fear. The human vessel destroyed our entire fleet in minutes, he reported to the assembled hegemony high command. Their weapons operate on principles we don't understand. They can manipulate gravity itself, creating localized distortions that tear matter apart at the molecular level. High Commander Vex, supreme leader of the hegemony, studied the tactical recordings with growing disbelief. The destruction of the fleet was so complete and swift that it defied everything they knew about space combat. You're certain this was a single ship? 20 kilometers long, crew complement unknown, weapon systems beyond our current understanding. But it's still just one vessel. We can overwhelm it with numbers. The other hegemony leaders nodded agreement, their warrior culture demanding vengeance for the humiliation they had suffered. Plans began forming for a massive assault using their reserve fleets, including the legendary planet-killer dreadnought Worldbreaker, a ship so powerful it had never been defeated in battle. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, emergency sessions convened on every major world as civilizations grappled with the implications of humanity's revealed capabilities. The Galactic Council called for an immediate assembly, but this time the atmosphere was very different from their previous dismissive discussions about the human problem. Ambassador Reed took his place at the council table, noting how the other delegates now avoided direct eye contact and spoke in hushed, respectful tones. The chair that had once seemed deliberately small now appeared appropriately sized, and his position at the table no longer felt like an afterthought. High Counselor Thane spoke first, his usual arrogance replaced by careful diplomacy. The recent events in the new Geneva system have raised questions about humanity's military capabilities. We seek clarification on the nature of your vessel and its weapons systems. Reed smiled politely, the same expression he had worn while enduring years of condescension and mockery. The Sovereign represents a defensive measure developed to protect human colonies from unprovoked aggression. As you witnessed, it performed its function effectively. One ship cannot change the balance of power in the galaxy, declared the Hive. Queen, though her clicking patterns suggested uncertainty rather than confidence, surely humanity doesn't believe a single vessel makes them equal to civilizations that have ruled the stars for millennia. Before Reed could respond, new sensor contacts appeared throughout the system. The Hegemony's Revenge Fleet had arrived, in force led by the massive Worldbreaker, and supported by over 300 warships drawn from every corner of their empire. It was the largest military force assembled in over a century, capable of conquering entire star systems. The fleet took positions throughout the system, their commanders broadcasting demands for humanity's immediate surrender and the turning over of the Sovereign for detailed examination. High Commander Vex himself led the fleet, determined to personally oversee humanity's destruction and the acquisition of their advanced technology. Captain Reynolds received the ultimatum while maintaining his patrol orbit around the damaged colony world. The Sovereign's sensors had tracked the Hegemony fleet's approach for hours, analyzing their formations and weapon capabilities with the cold precision of human military intelligence. This is High Commander Vex to the human vessel. You are outnumbered, 300 to 1 and facing the most powerful ship in Hegemony service. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. Reynolds studied the tactical display, noting the positioning of enemy vessels and the energy signatures of their weapons. The Worldbreaker was indeed formidable, mounting planet-killing weapons that could reduce entire continents to molten slag. Under normal circumstances, it would be a fair match for any capital ship in galactic service. High Commander, you have committed acts of war against the human species. Turn around now and you may yet survive this encounter. The response was immediate and predictable. The entire Hegemony fleet opened fire simultaneously, filling space with energy beams, plasma torpedoes, and exotic particle streams. The combined firepower could have destroyed small moons, but the Sovereign's defensive systems absorbed or deflected every attack with contemptuous ease. The human ship's retaliation was swift and surgical. Secondary weapons engaged the smaller vessels while the primary systems charged for something unprecedented. Instead of targeting the enemy fleet, the Sovereign's main cannon aimed at an uninhabited rocky world on the system's edge, a barren planet that served no purpose except as a demonstration target. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched through emergency broadcasts as humanity prepared to show the true extent of their capabilities. The weapon's charge cycle created gravitational distortions visible to the naked eye, bending light and warping space around the Sovereign's hull. Citizens of the galaxy, Captain Reynolds transmitted on all frequencies. For too long, established powers have treated humanity as children playing with dangerous toys. Today you will learn that we are not children, and our toys can reshape reality itself. The gravitational manipulation cannon fired, creating a focused distortion that traveled across space at near light speed. When it struck the target planet, the effect was immediate and absolute. The world didn't explode or shatter in the conventional sense. Instead, it collapsed inward on itself, its entire mass condensed into a point of infinite density, before expanding outward in a controlled implosion. Within seconds, a planet that had existed for billions of years became an expanding field of exotic particles and radiation. Not even dust remained of what had once been a world. The demonstration was so complete and terrible that even the battle-hardened hegemony warriors fell silent in shock. "This is what happens to worlds that threaten human civilization," Reynolds continued, his voice carrying across interstellar space to reach every inhabited system. "We have the power to unmake planets, to tear apart the very fabric of space-time itself. But we use this power only to defend ourselves and protect the innocent." The hegemony fleet began an immediate withdrawal, their commanders realizing that they faced technology so advanced it might as well be magic. The Worldbreaker, pride of their fleet and terror of lesser civilizations, retreated alongside the smaller vessels, its crew unwilling to test their mighty ship against weapons that could destroy planets with surgical precision. But the true impact of the demonstration was felt throughout the watching galaxy. Every major power witnessed humanity's casual display of force, the effortless destruction of a world broadcast live to billions of viewers. The implications were staggering and unmistakable. On the Draconis homeworld, military analysts worked frantically to understand the technology they had witnessed. Their most advanced weapons could crack continents, but the humans had unmade an entire planet with what appeared to be routine ease. The Lumina Collective entered extended meditation sessions, their energy-based consciousness struggling to comprehend matter manipulation technology that operated beyond their understanding. They had considered themselves the most advanced civilization in the galaxy, but humanity had just demonstrated capabilities that rendered their achievements primitive by comparison. Even the ancient Stellar Union, whose crystalline cities had stood for tens of thousands of years, began emergency defense preparations. If humans could destroy planets at will, no world was safe from their reach. The galactic balance of power had shifted in a single moment, and every civilization now understood that humanity was no longer the weak newcomer begging for acceptance. They were a force capable of ending civilizations, and their patience with galactic arrogance had finally reached its limit. 6 months after the Sovereign's demonstration, the galaxy had settled into an uneasy new equilibrium. The Grand Assembly Hall of Harmony Hub buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from every major civilization gathered for what many considered the most important council session in galactic history. The agenda was simple yet profound, establishing new diplomatic protocols in the age of human ascendancy. Ambassador Reed entered the chamber to find his seating arrangement dramatically altered. His chair now occupied a position of honor near the head of the curved table, with delegates from lesser powers moved to accommodate humanity's elevated status. The change was subtle but significant, reflecting the new reality that had emerged since the destruction of the nameless world. "Hi." Councillor Thane rose to address the assembly, his golden scales reflecting the chamber's lights in patterns that betrayed his inner tension. The proud Draconis Empire had spent the past 6 months frantically upgrading their military defenses and reconsidering their aggressive expansion policies. The casual ease with which humanity had demonstrated planet-killing capabilities had shaken their confidence in draconic supremacy. "We convene today to address the changing balance of power in our galaxy," Thane began, his voice carefully modulated to show respect rather than the condescension that had once characterized his speeches. "Recent events have demonstrated that all civilizations must adapt to new realities and reconsider our relationships with one another." The euphemistic language couldn't disguise the fundamental shift that had occurred. Every species in the chamber knew they were here because humanity had proven capable of ending their civilizations with surgical precision. The demonstration had been broadcast live across the galaxy, watched by billions who now understood that Earth's children were no longer supplicants seeking acceptance. President Morgan attended this session personally, making her first official visit to Harmony Hub since taking office. Her presence sent a clear message that humanity now considered galactic affairs worthy of their highest attention. She sat beside Reed, her calm demeanor masking the years of careful planning that had brought them to this moment. The first item on the agenda was the hegemony's formal request for a peace treaty with humanity. High Commander Vex appeared via hologram, his warrior's pride visibly struggling with the necessity of negotiation rather than conquest. The once mighty hegemony had spent months in defensive preparations, recalling fleets from across their territory to protect their core worlds. The hegemony acknowledges that our previous actions against human colonies were inappropriate, Vex stated, the words clearly painful for a species that had never apologized to anyone. We seek formal recognition of human territorial claims and the establishment of permanent borders between our civilizations. Reed consulted briefly with President Morgan before responding. Humanity appreciates the hegemony's desire for peace. We propose the following terms: immediate withdrawal from all disputed territories, reparations for the colonies you destroyed, and the establishment of neutral buffer zones to prevent future conflicts. The terms were harsh but not unreasonable, considering the hegemony's previous aggression. More importantly, they were backed by the implicit threat of the sovereign and whatever other capabilities humanity might possess. Vex agreed without negotiation, his military pragmatism overriding his warrior's pride. Similar scenes played out with other civilizations throughout the session. The aggressive expansion policies that had characterized galactic politics for centuries suddenly became exercises in careful diplomacy and mutual respect. The Stellar Union offered technological exchanges, the Lumina Collective proposed cultural partnerships, and even the isolationist Void Walkers emerged from their dimensional hiding places to establish formal relations with humanity. But the most significant change was evident in the overall tone of galactic discourse. Species that had dismissed humanity as primitive barbarians now spoke of human wisdom and technological innovation. The same rapid development that had once been criticized as reckless was now praised as visionary. History was being rewritten in real time by civilizations desperate to position themselves as friends rather than enemies of Earth. Dr. Williams addressed the scientific panel later that day, sharing carefully selected information about human technological achievements. She spoke of fusion reactors, quantum computers, and gravitational manipulation systems while maintaining strict security protocols. The other species listened with rapt attention, hoping to gain insights into the science behind humanity's demonstrated capabilities. Our approach to technology has always been driven by necessity rather than tradition, she explained to the assembled scientists. When faced with challenges, we adapt and innovate rather than relying on established solutions. This flexibility has served us well in developing new approaches to old problems. The implications were clear, without being explicitly stated. Humanity's technological edge wasn't just a matter of advanced equipment, but represented a fundamentally different approach to scientific development. While other species refined existing technologies over millennia, humans threw out conventional wisdom and started fresh when circumstances demanded it. The session's final agenda item addressed the elephant in the room, humanity's true military capabilities. Every delegation wanted to know how many ships like the Sovereign existed and what other weapons Earth might possess. The question came from the normally diplomatic Lumina Collective, phrased as a request for transparency in the interest of galactic security. President Morgan stood to address this concern personally, her words carrying the weight of executive authority. The Sovereign represents our commitment to defending human civilization and maintaining galactic peace. As for our other capabilities, we believe that mystery serves the cause of peace better than detailed revelation. She paused, letting the implications settle across the chamber. We will say this: the Sovereign is not unique. Construction of additional vessels is ongoing, and our defensive capabilities continue to expand. But we have no interest in conquest or domination. Our goals remain what they have always been: peace, prosperity, and the right to exist without fear of extinction. The carefully ambiguous statement left every delegation to draw their own conclusions about humanity's true strength. Intelligence. Services across the galaxy would spend months analyzing the brief statement for hidden meanings and clues about human capabilities. The uncertainty itself became a strategic advantage, making potential aggressors cautious about testing Earth's patience. As the session concluded, Reed transmitted a final message to the assembled delegates. 50 years ago, humanity entered galactic society as humble newcomers seeking acceptance and guidance. We were dismissed as primitive, restricted in our expansion, and treated as children who might someday grow into useful junior partners. His words carried no anger or resentment, only the quiet confidence of someone whose position no longer required justification. Today, we take our place not as supplicants or junior partners, but as equals who have earned their seat at this table through demonstrated capability rather than inherited privilege. The new galactic order was crystallizing around humanity's emergence as a major power. Trade agreements were rewritten, territorial boundaries redrawn, and military doctrines reconsidered in light of the changed strategic environment. The species that had once mocked humanity's rapid expansion now rushed to establish favorable relationships before Earth's patience wore thin. In the months that followed, the effects of this transformation rippled throughout the galaxy. Human colonies that had struggled under restrictive trade regulations suddenly found themselves courted by major civilizations offering generous economic partnerships. The buffer zones that had once contained human expansion were quietly abandoned, as former restrictions became diplomatic embarrassments. Captain Reynolds maintained his patrol routes along the edges of human space, the Sovereign's presence serving as a constant reminder of the new reality. Intelligence reports indicated that several civilizations had begun crash programs to develop their own gravitational manipulation technology. But early attempts had resulted in catastrophic failures that only emphasized the sophistication of human achievements. The construction facilities beneath Earth's surface worked around the clock, assembling additional vessels of the Sovereign class while developing even more advanced technologies. Humanity had learned the fundamental lesson of galactic politics. Respect was maintained through strength, and strength required constant development and demonstration. Admiral Roberts coordinated the deployment of humanity's expanding fleet from Luna Station. His strategic planning now focused on maintaining the peace rather than preparing for war. The irony wasn't lost on him that humanity's most devastating weapons had become their most effective diplomatic tools. 3 more ships identical to the Sovereign rolled out of the hidden shipyards over the following year, each one assigned to patrol different sectors of human space. The sight of these massive vessels became familiar throughout the galaxy, their distinctive profiles serving as mobile embassies that conducted diplomacy through presence rather than words. But perhaps the most significant change was the shift in how other species viewed humanity's fundamental nature. The violent history that had once been cited as evidence of barbarism was now interpreted as proof of human resilience and adaptability. Their short lifespans were seen as driving innovation rather than preventing long-term planning. Their rapid reproduction was viewed as ensuring genetic diversity rather than threatening overpopulation. The galaxy had discovered what humanity had always known, that being underestimated was often the greatest advantage of all. While other civilizations had spent millennia perfecting their existing technologies and refining their established cultures, humans had continued evolving, adapting, and pushing the boundaries of what was considered possible. The final session of the Historic Council meeting concluded with the signing of the new Galactic Accords, a comprehensive treaty that formally recognized humanity as a major power with all the rights and responsibilities that status entailed. The document established Earth's territorial claims, guaranteed access to trade routes, and most importantly, acknowledged humanity's right to defend itself by any means necessary. As the delegates departed Harmony Hub, many carried with them a new understanding of the species they had once dismissed. Humanity had not sought to conquer the galaxy or impose their will on other civilizations. They had simply demanded the respect that all sapient beings deserved, and backed that demand with capabilities that made resistance futile and compliance wise. The age of human ascendancy had begun, not with conquest or domination, but with the simple demonstration that Earth's children would never again be victims of someone else's ambition. The galaxy was learning to live with this new reality, and most found that cooperation with humanity brought benefits that far outweighed the risks of opposition. In the end, the greatest victory was not the destruction of fleets or the demonstration of planet-killing weapons, but the transformation of humanity's place in galactic civilization from tolerated newcomers to respected equals. The stars that had once seemed hostile now welcomed human exploration, and the future that had once appeared uncertain now stretched ahead, filled with infinite possibility.